Greetings and welcome to the DUOT Technologies Summer Investor Summit webcast. It's now my pleasure to introduce your host, Adrian Goldfarb, Chief Financial Officer of DUOT Technologies. Thank you. You may begin.
Thank you, Melissa. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Adrian Goldfarb, Chief Financial Officer for DUOT Technologies Group. I'm going to spend about the next 20 minutes or so taking you through our corporate presentation. This is the one that is publicly filed. We are going to be announcing results on or around August 14th. And so I obviously won't be addressing remarks as far as earnings and so forth, but I will give you an assessment of some of the actions that the company is taking during the presentation. So we are headquartered in Jacksonville, Florida. We have a staff of just over 50 employees. And the company's main business is turnkey advanced intelligent technologies. Just so you understand the basis for the technological underpinnings of the company, we are essentially producing a suite of software which we use pretty much for all of our industries. And we package that software together with a number of advanced hardware technologies, some of which are bespoke to the company. And we put that together for certain industries. And we don't cover a very wide range of industries, but you should understand that we are largely industry agnostic. Just to give you a very quick overview, our main focus is to collect data from our intelligence sensor and data acquisition systems. And that's something the company has been in the business for a long time. To that, we use our enterprise information management system to present that to the particular industry and for the particular application. And more recently, and you'll see a lot of focus through this presentation, we've added AI analytics, which allows for greater transparency for the data that we're collecting and greater analysis on that, once again improving the ROI for our clients. As I mentioned, we only serve a very limited amount of industries, although our products are industry agnostic. Our main focus, and that will be the main focus of this presentation, is our rail transportation using AI. We also have implementations for an area called gatehouse automation. And gatehouse automation is used for if you have, for example, a distribution center and you want to improve the throughput of trucks ingressing and egressing from that. Our systems are used to improve that, both the quality and also the speed. The company has a long history in commercial security solutions, and although that is not a main focus of the business anymore, primarily because many of the security solutions on the low end typically are lower margin or lower than our expected margin, we will take on larger projects as we see fit and as we see that they can add to the financials for the company. And then a fourth area, which is very specialized, but which we've had some success with, is in automating correctional facilities. And that essentially is where we take our technologies and we implement those through a particular correctional facility. And the expertise there that we're using with that is for being able to, in effect, switch the jail in particular to new technologies, but without having to remove the population from the site. And that comes down to both the way that our systems are engineered and also the particular in-house expertise of our consultants to do that. As I mentioned before, we are starting now to use artificial intelligence in a lot of our applications. And to that end, we launched a new AI and deep learning subsidiary, Trueview360, which makes up a part of the intellectual property of the company, and we expect to develop that more for our specific applications. Talk a little bit about our corporate structure. We are on NASDAQ. We uplisted to NASDAQ in February of this year under the symbol DUOT and consists of two operating subsidiaries. The first one is DUOT Technologies, Inc., which has been largely responsible for the turnkey data capture and is the subsidiary that implements a lot of these projects. Just to remember that a lot of these projects are usually more than 7 figures in sum and require the vast collection of a number of different entities that come together to produce this. And so that particular subsidiary is the largest one and that operates in that segment. The second area, which we decided to specialize on and create its own subsidiary for, is our AI subsidiary, Trueview360. That focuses on AI. It is a full-scale AI platform, and we have developed a private cloud with some proprietary modeling, but that's specifically, again, for the clients that we serve. So what is connected intelligence? Connected intelligence is the process by which you can use technology in order to deploy an application to a particular client's site to improve their ROI. I'm going to talk a little bit about an application that we do in the rail space, and you'll see how that goes out. However, it is important to note that we are industry agnostic. And so one of the big differences that DUOT offers our clients is that even though we are a software company and offer a solution, our approach is slightly different than going in and talking to a client and explaining to them the advantages of using particular automation. In addition to that, we tend to look at their business processes as they stand and try to adapt anything that we're going to implement to work with those business processes, as opposed to having them change their business processes. And that's why we've had some success in some of the large industrial areas, like, for example, freight rail automation, because it allows them to maintain processes which are in some cases federally mandated, but improve the speed and time to execution of that. We do have multiple skill sets. We have both an engineering facility, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time at the end talking about some of the changes we're making there. We have a software R&D facility, in addition to implementing at the client site. I would point out that we don't necessarily have all staffing in-house to deal with certain parts of it. So, for example, electrical contracting for the implementation is typically subbed out along with any of the construction, mainly because those are lower bandwidth to our gross margin, and we like to maintain our gross margin on our project. As I mentioned earlier, the process works as follows. We start with a turnkey data capture. That allows the operators of, for example, a railroad to access the vital information without disrupting any of the processes they already have. From there, that is put into an analytics capability with Trueview360, which is a relatively recent addition to our software suite. And what that does is takes the information and turns that into actionable information. In the particular process, AI will do an automatic analysis of certain types of mechanical issues or anomalies that might be expected to be found on a railroad as it's going forward, and then allows the railroad to action those rather than waiting till, for example, the train consist will pull into a rail yard and then do the examination. The last piece, which is something that DUOT Tech has been working on for a number of years, is our end-user interface, and that effectively presents the presentation layer, presents the information and images so that management can then take decisions on that. And what you'll see on the picture, it's in the lower, middle of the screen, but the lowest picture there is a picture of our Centrico screen. And it's not too easy to see, but you'll see pictures of train consists, which are picked up by our system. And then on the right-hand side, there's a listing of all the train cars. And you'll see some of them are marked in red, which is the AI system notifying the operator that there are issues with those rail cars, okay, which can then be verified by mechanical operators. The DUOT differentiator is we provide end-to-end solutions to address this unmet need. So we go from basically soup to nuts. We put something in, we do the entire integration, including all the software, all the hardware. We do use some bespoke hardware, as I mentioned earlier, to deal with some of the more complex issues. These are typically to do with speed differentiation. But we are building a very, very complex system and we're starting now to get pretty good traction inside at least one of these industries. I've talked a little bit about Trueview360, and Trueview360 is I'm just having one issue here. Okay. So Trueview360 is an actual AI platform which enables computers to continuously learn new concepts from raw data. So how would this work? For example, if you take the rail application, you take a rail consist, a car that comes off of that. Initially, that car will go through, and there could be any one of 1 to 50 to 100 different potential anomalies that have been identified by the railroads as something that would need fixing. Could be a safety issue, could be a regulatory issue, or just a simple maintenance issue. And so what happens is, as the rail cars transit our system, effectively our system then learns from that, and we use certain training methodologies initially to train the system on what it might be looking for. From that, those systems then can, in effect, enter what's called a self-learning mode. So at some point, the system will be running through and will automatically identify issues from that. And as I mentioned before, we can look for performance anomalies. There can be security threats, mechanical defects, and then certain preventive maintenance issues that we go for. This proprietary AI platform includes our privately hosted cloud architecture. The reason for that is that because of the size of the images and some of the data that would have to be moved around, this would be too expensive to run on a system like AWS. But you have to understand that this is a very specialized area and is only really used for our clients. We currently have about 22 rail applications that are in learning mode for multiple customers, and we're going to expand those out as we go along, with the expectation that at some point in the future, the regulators will allow for completely automated inspection. And I'm going to talk about in a little moment exactly how that's going to be done. Just a little bit on our Trueview360 roadmap. As I said, we launched that company in 2019. We developed the platform basically throughout that year. And then as we got into 2020, we started the application development. And we are now developing the algorithms for 2 out of our 3 main rail customers, one of them being CSX, the other one being KCSM, for deployment into their systems as we go throughout the rest of this year. We also have another way to do that, whereas if you have a rail client that already has, for example, wants a third-party vendor to develop those AI applications or algorithms, we can also adapt those into our system. As I mentioned earlier, our technology, although it's proprietary to us, is a very open architecture, and so it allows for people to integrate things that they're already using. Once again, the opportunity is so that we don't have to tell a customer necessarily to change their business model. If you look at the top 10 use cases, world markets in 2025, there's a listing here as you go down the slide, and you can see that Trueview360 is sufficiently sophisticated enough on an open platform to be able to address many of those top 10 use cases. And as I said, this will be used not necessarily to go out and just do specific AI outside of our industries, but will be used to be able to, as we see various clients come along with situations that they want to be addressed, where our AI will be able to adapt into that without the risk of us having to use a third-party platform. And that's the reason we developed this particular application. I've mentioned rail a lot, and predictive rail maintenance is something that is expected to grow at quite a high rate during the next few years. There's a lot of very attractive opportunities in the digital railway market, and the rail companies are really starting now to gather and be able to deploy technology into the use of their system. A lot of this was driven because about 2 or 3 years ago, the railroads started to adopt something called predictive analysis. So with that, our system neatly dovetails into that. This approach came with precision railroading, something that was adapted by a gentleman by the name of Hunter Harrison, who came to CSX. Unfortunately, is no longer with us anymore. But just to understand, if you're doing anything with the railroads, precision railroading is very, very adaptive to the DUOT technologies, and we plan to take full advantage of that. Let me talk a little bit about our solutions for rail. First of all, I'll come to the analysis of rail cars, which you should understand that our AI applications can adapt to a number of different situations. What you're seeing in this set of slides, the pictures that are in the slide, is the use of AI, specifically our AI, to do identification. If you look at the middle picture on the top, this is someone who has unfortunately fallen onto the track. He's probably a little bit the worse for wear. And that system then automatically triggered and can send notifications to operators up and down the line to prevent, hopefully, an accident, but also to alert the rail, in this case the transit agency, to people that are interfering with the track. It's interesting that one of the discoveries that they made when they installed this system happens to be in New York City, 50th Street Station on the C line, that there were many people on the track, many more people on the track than they expected. However, the benefits of using AI, if you look at the top row, left-hand side picture, you'll see a gentleman with a hard hat and the high visibility jacket. That's someone who's supposed to be there. So the system has the ability to not send alerts for someone that's supposed to be on the track, as opposed to, for example, on the right-hand side, someone who's illegally crossing the track. We will be using this for AI object learning and also possibly for AI tagging. And so these are, for example, in the rail, making a difference between freight rail and passenger rail for certain transit rail scenarios. And our business is starting to break out into some of those things over the next couple of years. The big push for us over the next probably couple of years is in the rapidly changing freight rail industry. We are, as I mentioned, precision railroading area. The railroads want to run their systems much more like the commercial airline, where departure times are actually set. So it's driven by departure times rather than load. And so consequently, it's fortunate for us that DUOT's rail inspection portal dovetails very neatly into that, and provides a solution to speed up and make better use of the rolling stock that they have within there. So the current railcar inspection process, in case you're not familiar with that, it's mandated by the FRA, the Federal Railroad Administration, and it says that a railcar requires mechanical inspection prior to leaving a rail yard. Typically, the dwell time for those inspections are 1.5 to 3 hours per train. In actual fact, it's probably getting longer than that because the trains in some cases are getting up to almost 2 miles long. So we invented the automated railcar inspection technology built off a project that we started many years ago, which was doing security analysis of railroads down on the Mexican-U.S. border. And so consequently, the objective here was to reduce the time for inspecting those railroad cars from, as the slide says, 1.5 to 3 hours, down to probably about 30 minutes. And it maybe is even shorter than that. We've developed all the technology over the years to be able to analyze and look at that and be able to make much more improvement about how fast it goes in there. Because this is all about the ability to move rail consists faster through the system. The North American rail market is a very big market. There's approximately 1.5 million freight rail cars. There's 140,000 miles of Class 1 track. And so consequently, the likely take-up of rail inspection portals, and by the way, each rail inspection portal typically costs a minimum of $1.8 million, and there's recurring revenue. But it represents a big opportunity for us. And this is our big push. This is expected to be our big revenue gain over the next year, 2 years, and 3 years. And we clearly have a leadership position in deploying that into the railroads. as evidenced by our work with OCN, KCSM, CSX. We're also in Mexico with Ferromex. So effectively, more than 50% of the North American rail systems have at least one or multiple of these rail inspection portals.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand by. We're experiencing some technical difficulties.
I might have a number for him.
Please continue.
Hello, sorry about that. I was somehow knocked off the system. So let me continue here. So our solution, as I mentioned, was the rare DUOT Tech RIB solution. That is a four-sided, in effect, yard that the train transits through and does automated mechanical inspection at speeds up to 80 miles an hour. Benefits of that is that you're reducing the inspection time to find anomalies, as I said, from anywhere from 1.5 to 3 hours down to probably 30 minutes or less. And it does give not only substantial savings for the bottom line, you've also got better throughput, which has a follow-on beneficial effect. Just to show you some of the examples of detections, these are just 4 pictures here of things that the system will find. In this particular case here, the separated truck is where one of the bearings has come undone, and this definitely would be a derailment issue. You can read the other ones, springs out of positions, oil leaks, and so forth. But rather than me try to talk to it, our client, CN, produced a very, very informative video. And so what I've decided to do is play that video. It's about 2 minutes, which will give you the best example.
Today, there are a lot of manual procedures in the railcar inspection process. People looking at railcars as they go by or as they stand in a yard, trying to identify the potential for defect. That process has worked for years and has helped CN maintain a safe and reliable railway.
Well, our daily tasks can be pretty challenging at times. When we do the certified car inspection, you're down on the ground, you're in the dirt, you're in the mud, you're in the trenches, you're doing a hard task. It can take up to an hour and a half, to possibly even 2. So what's very interesting about this is that we can take that time and reduce it down from an hour and a half to 2, down to minutes to seconds with a technology that is the automated railcar inspection portal.
So we're attempting to go from a completely manual inspection, where we use a human eye, to move toward a automated inspection through a portal, which automatically that orders cars, and we get to do the repairs. These are high-resolution cameras pointed at the train, with the train going through at track speed up to 60 miles per hour. These are very large pieces of infrastructure with very high-intensity LED lighting that lights up the sides and the undercarriage of the train. With cameras all the way around taking pictures of everything, from what's underneath to the sides to the top, we get a picture of the entire train. A picture of every single car following the locomotive is captured 360 degrees. no matter what time of the day or night, time of year. There's no discrimination between that organ and the car. So where a human eye may miss, the machine will not.
It'll capture an accident before an accident happens.
We're going to have the same eye looking at rail cars all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we should catch more of the defects and make it a safer railroad at the end of the day. I envision what this is going to do for CN Rail and the industry overall. I'd love to see what this looks like 20 years from now, and what are we doing and how safe the railroad could be using this kind of technology.
So that is a very comprehensive video that explains exactly what we're doing with CN. CN is our largest client, and we expect to be spending the next few years developing out our rail inspection portal system. So I'm getting to the end of my presentation here, and in the last few minutes, I thought it would be appropriate to use some question and answer here. So I'm going to read out some questions that I've received. And just maybe give some answers to that. The first question is, can you talk about the commitments you're seeing from the railways in further automating their inspection of the processes? I can give you some direction in saying that all of the railroads have significant interest in what we're doing. They're at different stages of development, but we are starting to see now multiple implementations and anticipated implementations over the next 1 to 2 years, which will start to see the rail inspection portal be accepted as the standard platform throughout the rail network. There's a question here: what are the capital requirements needed from here to execute on the RIP and other opportunities? As you know, we did a significant capital raise earlier this year in line with our upgrade to the NASDAQ. Our expectation is that we have sufficient capital now to execute, and I'll just make a note to that our process for doing these capital implementations is a joint process financially with the client, where a considerable amount of money is placed in escrow up front, and so consequently we don't need a tremendous amount of capital to be able to implement new projects. Next question is, what is the revenue model? The revenue model basically is that we charge a fixed fee for the rail inspection platform. As I said, the minimum price now is getting down to around about $1.8 million. It can be higher than that depending on if people want more views. And then on top of that, there's a charge for both the algorithms that are developed for that. That typically is going to be a recurring revenue. And then also there's about 8 to 10%. About 8 to 10% maintenance revenue on top of that. There's a question here: what does success look like 6 months from now? And I'd like to just perhaps finish off with just explaining what is going on with the company right now. We originally put out a guidance forecast prior to the pandemic of about $20 million for 2020. We're not going to make that. We've withdrawn our guidance at this point, mainly because there's a lot of uncertainty right now. I will say that the good news for us is that we are not really seeing any cancellations of our technologies by anyone that we're working with right now. So we don't have the issues like, for example, an airline where the business model may be changing, but we see more likely the delays and taking a little bit more time to get contracts signed and everything. But I see a very bright future for us. I want to address this specifically. Obviously, our current CEO is retiring. We are already well into the search, the executive search, and we expect that our new CEO will be in place relatively quickly, probably in September, and that we're also making some significant changes in our staffing, both at the management level, in sales and engineering and R&D, And then also in our individual contributors, we've completely built a new engineering team, and we have a very, very experienced VP of engineering joining us. So in summary, I see a very bright future for us, albeit a little delayed at the moment, and I look forward to updating you all in the next couple of months. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This concludes today's conference. You may disconnect your lines at this time. Thank you for your participation.